Introduce Norman. I want to put a plug in, a preview of upcoming attractions. January, we will have Bud Year Out from South Haven is going to talk about the history of Buffalo. In in February, and I don't know the man's name, but Rod Cook knows a guy who is a grandson of Bill Pickett, a 101, who was a famous 101 Ranch rodeo guy. Let's see, March. Oh, March is Dolores Carr talking about women's history and the suffrage. And then in April, the director of the Kansas Aviation Museum in Wichita will be here. And in May, I'm still just trying to decide. But we want to welcome and thank Norman Korn for coming tonight. When I talked to Norman recently, he told me about parachuting on D-Day, fighting in Holland, and being surrounded by Germans at Bastogne, France. And I realized that Norman was everywhere that you didn't want to be during World War II. He was in several of the most dangerous battles, and we appreciate him coming tonight to share his experiences with us.
August the 19th, 1941, I was inducted to go to Leavenworth and for military service. On August 20th of 1941, raised my hand and said I do, and I was in trouble. It was supposed to be for 1 year only. Well, I went from there to Fort Eustis, Virginia for 13 weeks and was trained in artillery. And after 13 weeks, I went to Fort Hancock, New Jersey. This is a patch up here for it. And it was a coast artillery. And I was there about a week, and they sent us over to Governor's Island for, as it was a military prison for lifers. They had murders and so forth, whatever, and they had 20 years to life to serve over there. The guard that was supposed to be there is going up into upstate for some maneuvers. And you know what happened on December the 7th? Pearl Harbor struck. I mean, Japanese struck at Pearl Harbor. And that's where I got this yellow ribbon. And then I went back to camp, and I was on holding different things on guns and such like. We had a Navy barbette, 6-inch barbette. It had a 6-inch shell, weighed 105 pounds. And then I've worked on a 12-inch disappearing rifle. That's 12 inches diameter, projectile about between 3 and 4 feet long, weighed 1,000 pounds. It was down low in position when the first. It was down low when it was loaded, and when it was raised, it could shoot anywhere from 8 to 25 miles. 25 miles is just as you're going over the horizon. And then from there, I did some camouflage painting there. Had a lighthouse there for one thing, and there's a housekeeper who lived right behind it. And on this lighthouse, we painted extension of the other house, just brought it all out a little farther. And above the roof, while we looked off over in the background, and any colors that we seen back there, we kind of put some of that all painted on there, so that if the enemy looked in, all they would see would be a house and background. And what we painted windows on there. We painted steps going up to a door. And after about 3 months there, why, some of the guys looked over there and they swore that they could walk up those steps, open that door. If they did, well, they'd had about 6 or 7 feet of solid concrete to walk through. Well, I had a pass every night to go out of the fort, and we generally took it, 30 overnight pass. And while I was on this detail, well, the first sergeant, he only got to go to, he lived in New York City, and he only got to go in there about once every 3 weeks. I knew I was in trouble if I ever had to go back to the battery. I'd catch every dirty detail there was for 6 months. So the United States paratroops, why they asked for volunteers. And so I went down to and took a medical exam, passed, and that was probably in July or August, I expect. July, I think it was. And the first week of September, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, for parachute training. About 30 days later, we packed our own parachutes. We double-timed. Every place we went, we had to double-time. And then we packed our own parachutes. The first 5 jumps, here's my pair of wings. First 5 jumps, we packed our own parachute. And after that, we got our wings, and then we went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for more training. And from North Carolina, after, I was in 42, we did a lot of training. In 43, we went on board ship to go to England, and we got just outside of Torpedo Junction, and the ship lost its engines. They went dead on him. So we set out there with one other ship, and they finally got us back into the harbor there at St. John's, Newfoundland, and we spent 30 days there. That got me the blue ribbon. 30 days. And when they got that patched up, they started out of the harbor, and they tore a hole in the bottom of the ship. It was low tide. And so we sat outside until they could, but then they radioed in for another boat or ship, and it came. They didn't have supplies. So we had to go back to Halifax, Nova Scotia. We got there, the longshoreman was on strike too. So we had to get some people from our ship to load supplies, and we came out of there and they caught another convoy to go across. Oh, by the way, on board this ship that we was on this going to England, there was the 245th Coast Artillery, the 101st Airborne, 377 Parachute Field Artillery. There was a battalion of that on there. There's 500 men. The deck just above, believe it or not, there was 200 blacks. So when we pulled guard duty on those doors, there was 2 guards at every door, one outside and one inside, make sure that nothing happened. Well, we got stock. We got to England, and with 47 days, about like Columbus when he came across. Took him about 47 days to get across. Took us to go back the other way. It took us 47 days. Well, we got there in September 1943, and it was a lot of training, some more jumps, and by the time I started to go to France, I had 18 jumps. There was 17 jumps behind me. Went to port of embarkation on June, long in June there. And the day we were supposed to go, why, it was rainy and cloudy and bad weather. And so when we made the jump, it was at midnight, June the 7th, 1944. Yeah, midnight. And had a full moon. There's a bright moon out there. And so that when we bailed out of the airplane, well, it was only about, I'd say about 300 to 400 feet above the ground. And I rode the man's backpack out that went out just ahead of me. He didn't even want to get out until I was out too. And when we landed on the ground, I was about 7 or 8 feet from him. And that night, we jumped with the infantry. I was in the forward observer at that time, and within 15 minutes after we lined up to move out, somehow or other they moved out and we didn't. There was 3 of us. So we traveled all night from midnight that night until 8 o'clock the next evening before we got to division headquarters. And our captain came over and picked us up the next day. And then I got back into the artillery end of it. We had 4 guns when they jumped. They had 1 gun when they found it, got it, and then they picked up 105, so we could fire one or the other. And then after about a week, we got a hold of 2 German 76 Howitzers, which is a good bit like the old mule pack that we had. And boy, we just fired the heck out of that. We had lots of ammunition, so we'd shoot it right back at them. The first night there, I had a night fire mission. You could see that bullet that shell go from the gun right up and over the peak and start down the other side before it disappeared on you. One mission, that's all we fired on that night. And because they started shooting into us. So we just used that during the daytime. And I spent 30 days or so, a little over 30 days I think it was, in there. We lost quite a few people by accident or something or other, and by been taken as prisoners there in Normandy. Then we went back to England and got resupplied with not only some new Howitzers, but with personnel and others to fill out. And we had did some training there. That was from about the 1st of July to 20th of September. Yeah, 20th of September, we jumped into Eindhoven, Holland. Spent 72 days there. And in November, that was a rainy season. Boy, it rained too. We had water. Oh, we waded through water to go to the mess hall. Every place we went, our boats wasn't dry for better than 30 days. And after we got, always, while we was there, we was under the English command of Bonnie Montgomery. And we got English rations. Part of the English rations was rum. Well, everybody in our gun crew had to get their rum. If they didn't drink it, they brought it back to the sergeant and myself. I was a gunner corporal, because we liked it. And that was a good rum. That was the kind that was rocked in the old rocking chair that you've heard about. Boy, that was smooth. After we left there, why, we went to Chalon on the Marne, and that parachute picture of me, why, that was taken there. And we were supposed to get resupplied with the supplies and everything. Oh, by the way, when we got there, it was about the 1st of December, so it was starting to get cold. We didn't have any long handles. A lot of things we didn't have, which we should have had. We was only there about a week. And on the 19th day of December, we loaded on trucks and headed into Bastogne. Well, that was if the Germans could have taken that away from us, why, they'd have had a clean sweep right to Antwerp. And that would have made about at least another 6 months of fighting for us to get back to where we were. So we held on. They had 155 rifles was in there, and that was an outfit from Paola, Kansas, that was in there, and the Germans were breaking through, so they was getting out, and we was getting in. We got in on the night of the 19th. There's about that much snow on the ground. The ground was harder than the dickens. You couldn't dig a hole. So that night, why, I just scraped some of the snow off the top of the ground, laid down my bag, crawled in, closed and all, and laid there and shivered the rest of the night until morning, till we could build a fire. The morning of the 20th, we was completely surrounded. And we could shoot 3 miles over and hit the enemy. And the infantry is up over there. And one night while all of our supplies was coming in by airplane. We dropped in there gasoline for our Jeeps, food, any food we had. We only ate 2 meals a day there for December, rest of December. And one was at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the other was about the middle of the afternoon. And Christmas Day, why, they passed out some little packages of cheese and some crackers, and that was our noontime meal. That was it. And Patton had had a few tanks in there with us. There was a few with us, but the rest of them he had off someplace else. And so I was along in, well, one night, the Germans was making a big push, and we fired about our battery fired about 100 rounds that night, and kept getting just fired a little bit closer to our troops. The Germans, we finally broke the Germans, and they finally took off running, I guess. And the next morning, they came back and asked us for any ammunition that we had. A lot of those infantrymen had one clip in their rifle. That's all they had. Some of them had Tommy guns. They had one clip for it. That was it. Between them and death. Well, we gave them all the ammunition we could. And about the next day or two, well, then we got some more ammunition dropped in. But as long in later, well, about the 1st of December when Patton finally broke through. And then after that, why, we were on and off the line for the rest of the time. And I got one battle for Normandy. Here I got one spearhead invasion, 1 star, and one star for Holland, 1 for Bastogne, and then the 4th star was for the Battle of Germany. We was on and off the line the rest of the time. We got up to Ulm on the Danube River. That was up in Germany, and we were supposed to engage the enemy there. There wasn't no enemy there. And we asked some of the people around there, and they said, oh, they're probably at least 20 miles north, heading towards the mountains, heading towards the Alps. And so about the next day or two, we had move on up the line, the same thing all the way, the rest of the way, and no more fighting. You know, the Germans just see, but they didn't have any rifles or anything. They was headed back down to surrender to whoever wanted to take them. And some of them went on the way on up in the mountains. We wound up in, up towards Berchtesgaden. That was Hitler's hideout. And we was up in that area. And they put us in our crew was in a house up where they had the ski slopes for 1938 Olympics. We was right in that area. And I'll describe the house for you. The house, it had a big wide, about 12-foot wide hallway down through the house. Big old hard plank floors. Over on the left side was a tack room, and there's another little shop area there. On the other side here was a living room, and then over there was a kitchen. And you open the door at the end of the hall, and the cow was right there. It was in the stable area. The floor above, you had bedrooms along here. I don't know whether it was, I can't remember whether it was bedrooms over here or for some other. But you go down the end of the hall, open the door, you walk right out into the haymow. And there was a walkway just inside, went to the right. You go down out over there, open the door, and use an outside toilet. So everything was handy. Everything in it went clear down to a big tank, big like a cistern down below. They called everything like that. They used it on their fields and such like, the moisture from there. But that was quite a place. When they cut their hay with a scythe. And then they'd string up some poles and hung some wires across there. They'd take this hay and hang it on these wires to let it dry, because it wouldn't dry otherwise up there in the mountains. But that's the way they dried their hay. And then they get it down and then haul it on into the haymow and stack it up in there for the animals. Any questions?
How did you get back to the States?
Oh, well, when I was there, didn't have enough points to go home. I had the point system, you know. And, well, let's say I had a couple of years in the States. That counted for something, I forget what. And then for overseas, I had 4 6-month little stripes. That counted for something. And then during 1944, why I got my hash mark. That was 3 years in the service. That counted for something. We had good conduct river. Each one of those stars counted for 5 points apiece. And then to get me enough to go home, they finally came along and gave me the Bronze Star. And that gave me enough points to go home. So in September, well, I'll back up a ways. Before I got enough points, why, the captain came to us one day and gathered us all together, and he said that our next assignment was Tokyo. Some of those guys got great big smiles on their face. They could see themselves going back to the States and starting to cross there, and they was going to disappear. That's all there was to it. And the captain said, "Oh, by the way, we're going through the Suez Canal." Boy, that face, it dropped right now. Yeah. Well, we didn't have to, because they broke up over there too. Wayne Utt, that lived in Mulvane, he was on the Enola Gay, I think it was, or something like that. And that's the airplane that Tibbets dropped those 2 A-bombs over there. That took care of the Japanese for us. So I got to go home, went from there down to Marseille, France, and got a boat, a ship, I guess it is. And in one of those deals, why there's a picture of 3 guys taken on the beach in Marseille. One was Charles Danforth. He was from New Hampshire. It was Norman Corn from Kansas. And the other one was Margarito H. Avila. He was from San Diego. Here was that. 3 of us had our pictures taken, and each one got they took them home. They took a picture right there on the beach, you know, with the canvas over their head. He processed them and printed them right there on the beach and handed them to us in just a few minutes. We came into Boston Harbor, and up there was a sign, very big long across there, said the best damn soldiers in the world pass through these portals. And I went from there to Fort Leavenworth. They gave me a 30-day furlough, and I went home. Spent 30 days there and went back up, and that was on the 26th of August, no, 26th of October. I went back up there, and on the 27th I got my discharge. And then I went down to Kansas City. I had a sister there, and bought some civilian clothes. And I'd been used to wearing wool trousers and wool shirt, and I put that little thin cotton shirt on, and I was about ready to get my other shirt, so I had something on. I felt like I was naked. But then I went into Kansas City and I bought a suit and a overcoat, and I spent $125 there, I think it was, for those 2. And I went on down home, and that was it. And down on my deal, I wrote after October the 27th, "Oh, happy day."
What year did you get out, Norman?
Huh?
What year was it that you were discharged?
1945. October the 27th. 4 years, 20 days, 4 years, 2 months, 2 months and 7 days.
Norman, didn't you tell me you were an honor guard for Eisenhower?
Oh yeah, I've been honor guard for him. I think I still got the payola little slip, but with on a piece of white.
He was an honor guard for Eisenhower.
Eisenhower's. Oh, I in England, in France, and up in Germany after the war. I've been on the honor guard. What we did, we wore our best clothes, stood up here, he stood out in front of us, and the troops marched by in review. So, and one time, oh yeah, the last I had a mustache that I had on for about 7 months, and it came here and had a little curled up a little. Never trimmed. And he was walking down in front of us, and he said to the guy with him, he said, "Looks like Paola's got quite a mustache." So I kept that mustache until I came home. And then I finally just shaved it off. Or went back down to what I used to wear, a little small one. When I was in Holland, why, the woman there by our gun crew, why, she thought we was old men. I was 25 years old. And she said only old men wear mustaches like that. They had to be 45 years old or older. And so, yeah, she was surprised that about every one of us had a great big old mustache. Yeah.
What kind of planes were you jumping out of?
C-47s. That's like a C-46. C-46 got the oval door. C-47s had the cargo door. You had a suspension line inside. You had a 15-foot cable, and you snapped on it. And then when you went out, you turned to the left. Go out and you turn to the left. The tail of the ship's back over here. You start your drop, and you got the propellers back here blowing that air into you, and it pushes you on down. And I know at jump school there, I think about the first time, we were supposed to, after we bailed out, we were supposed to say Geronimo, and then look up, either that or count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and then look up to see if you had a chute overhead. If you didn't have a chute, well, you pulled your reserve. First time I bailed out, why, I forgot everything. I bailed out, and I was going down, and I said, "Oh, hell, it's too late now," and I looked up. Had a pretty white canopy above my head. Oh, great day. Yeah, we had 5 jumps down there, and you got your parachute wings. And then, let's see, 5, I made 7 more, I guess it was. I had 12 jumps there. Jumped down to South Carolina, and they loaded us in the C-46 to head back home, back to Polk Field. On the way, this guy in this plane, he was flying down about treetop height, bouncing up and down to go over trees. And there's a man down there with a, I don't know, a team of horses, I think it was a team of mules. Boy, he was having quite a time with those mules. I bet he could have killed him a pilot. Really easy like. We got back to Polk Field and landed. That's the first time I ever came down in an airplane. No, I made those 12 jumps to the States, and I think there was 5 jumps in England, and when you bailed out, you're supposed to check the ground to see which way the wind was blowing. And if the wind was in your face, you reached up and grabbed a hold of one of the risers and pulled it down so that you could turn around and have the wind in your back when you landed. So That's one thing you always did. Nearly always. Anyway, then when you landed, you get down about 100 feet, you reach up with both hands and pull those risers down from as high as you could, clear down to your chest here or below. And that would go from about 60 miles an hour down to about 30 miles an hour that when you hit the ground. When you hit the ground, while you throw your arms up here and you go right into a parachute roll. Roll over and come right up on your feet, and then you could unbuckle the, otherwise you'd have fell flat on your face. One time when I landed, why, the wind had a gust of wind that caught this parachute and started dragging me. So I rolled over on my belly and reached up and started pulling those suspension lines and kept pulling, and that chute just kept going a little slower and finally laid flat on the ground. Then you could get up and get out of your chute. Otherwise it could drag you who knows how far. Any other questions? Or we got time to quit?
Did you ever get injured?
What?
Did you ever get injured?
No. Well, yes, I did too, in one way. When I think about the last jump in England, I forgot one basic rule: check the ground at speed error. I came in backwards. I got knocked out, and I don't know how long I laid there. And when I woke up, I had one heck of a headache. I didn't have a drop of water on me, and I finally got up, took my helmet off, and I was walking down a road there, swinging that helmet. And the captain came along, and I said, "Is there a medic around somewhere?" Yeah, he said, "Right down there at that hedgerow." So I went down there. They didn't even have an aspirin. Well, in my billfold, I knew I had some BC powders. I kept those in a little paper deal. I kept them in there just for emergencies. And so I said, asked him, I said, "Do you have any water?" Yeah, they had water. So I said, "Give me some water and I'll take this BC powder." And that kind of helped my headache for a while. Kind of got.
I'm wondering, how old were you when you started, and what's your favorite memory, or your best memory of all this?
The parachute?
Of anything that you went through?
Oh, I don't know.
How old were you when you started?
Parachute? Or I was 21 years old when I went in the service. I was 22 years old when I went to parachute school. Oh yeah, I can tell you a little bit more there. The cadre out of the 82nd Airborne went to not only 82nd, but to the 101st Airborne for as officers in those outfits. I think I was probably one of the first Kansans to go through parachute training. In September of 1942, the 101st Airborne had been decommissioned at the end of in 1868 out of the Civil War. They'd had some good honors and everything there, and had never been recommissioned until September of 1942. And it was commissioned as a parachute battalion or division, and that's when I went into that. And oh yeah, in France there, why, as we was heading towards division headquarters that night, why, we passed little road. Well, the roads are more like lanes here. They wasn't really big roads. They was just little narrow deals down in those areas. There's dead animals laying along there, dead Germans. Didn't bother you a bit. One place we seen that parachute uniform laying over there. Boy, we was ready to kill in those Germans by the thousands if we could. One thing about it over there, why, you got hit, why, there was no corpsmen around, very few. They had no hospitals. A lot of them just laid there and died. And but now they can fly you to Romstead, Germany, and take care of you in a hurry. But then, why, it's more or less on your own. I've seen some of them laying there. They had one or two morphine hooks hanging on them, where they'd give them a shot of morphine, and they had to move on and notify where they were when they find a corpsman or somebody to maybe take care of them. But a lot of them still sitting, laying there.
What was your rank when you got out?
What
was your rank when you got
Corporal.
out? Corporal.
I was a gunner corporal. I was on #1 gun after Normandy. I mean, in Holland on. And my job was to set the sights and everything on there. We had 2 poles we set out. One was about 300 feet or 150 to 300 feet from the gun, and the next one was on down the line a ways. And they would give us a coordinates that they wanted to set on those guns, and we'd set that on there. We'd set out the first stake, and then we'd have somebody take the next stake on out, and we'd motion which way you wanted to move it. And when it got right on or right on it, why, we'd give a motion to sink it. And then after that, why, every fire mission, I'd have to check and make sure that move the trail one way or the other. And I'd set readings on the side and look down and see whether it was lined up. And while I was doing that, they was loading the gun. And when I was ready, I just said ready. And the sergeant, he would, whoever the officer was that just had the fire mission, he'd let him know that #1 gun was ready. We was the one that a lot of times we would fire around, and then after we got a new coordinate, and we'd fire the round, and the forward observers would see where it hit in conjunction with what they wanted us to hit. And if we need to move it, why, he would tell them how many yards or how many he wanted left or right. And then when we hit whatever position it was, well, then he'd call for a fire mission, the officer would. And when it was on, or close enough, they might give us just a little correction and call for 5 rounds. And we had 6 guns there, and they'd fire 5 rounds into the enemy or something or other. So that's that.